All right, we have a ton of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off. Usually I give people a little bit of extra time to jump on. But as I mentioned, I'm Courtney Latima. I'm the director of the inside sales team here at Winslow Technology Group. I am joined by Jeff Naperski, who is our senior professional services engineer. And in an unbiased opinion, more importantly, he's my co-fearless leader for our Microsoft practice. So we're excited to be doing this together. I am going to run us through the agenda real quick. So I will start off with an overview of who Winslow Technology Group is. I'm sure you guys have probably heard this if you're some of our customers, but everybody has their own little perspective of it, so I'll give you mine. And then I will kick it over to Jeff, who's going to run us through how to modernize your IT infrastructure using Microsoft, which is a big word to say. He's going to say a lot of stuff, and we'll be able to pick and pull what will help you guys out. And then at the end, we will also do a Q&A. We should have time for a couple questions, hopefully, but if we don't, we'll get to you afterwards. Please throw all your questions in the chat box, and at the end, we'll pick out a couple of them. So who's Winslow Technology Group? We are headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts, but we also have offices in New York, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. We like to say that we are from the desktop to the cloud and beyond. My team specifically handles the endpoint. So we are anything endpoint hardware, software, security, and services. Jeff is on the services team. So a lot of them work with all of the installations, deployments, migrations, anything post-sales. And then we also, of course, have our data center team that handles all of the stuff that is in your data center, whether that's storage servers, hyperconverged, disaster recovery, all that good stuff. We really work to identify game-changing technology so that we can then come to our customers and provide the highest level of customer satisfaction and deliver great outcomes. Kind of takes us off to our next part, right? So we really base ourselves off of, or I guess judge ourselves off of 3 different key things. Are we providing passion? Are we providing expertise? And then are we providing those outcomes that makes our customers feel like we have done what they've asked us to do? We do that through 5 different pillars. We have our customers who are number 1 to us. Are you guys happy to be with us? Are we providing those outcomes? Are you guys giving us feedback, good, the bad, the ugly? We talk about our employees. Are they happy to be here? Do they enjoy working at Winslow Technology Group? Do they have that passion? Do they have that expertise in order to provide those outcomes? And then we look at our partners. We don't go out and partner with everybody. We really try to figure out which partners are invested in providing good outcomes, which partners have really good technology that provide those outcomes for customers, and which partners want to partner with us. So we're pretty picky about which partners we partner with. And then we look at our community. Are we giving back to the community that is given to us? We know that we are only the company we are with the people that we surround ourselves with. So we really work hard to give back to the community. And then we have our investors, which is essentially Scott Winslow. Because he's the only one, it allows us to be pretty flexible and agile with moving around and taking feedback and making changes needed, and really focusing in on, can we have that passion? Do we have the expertise? And can we deliver those outcomes for our customers? Last thing I'll say, because I know Jeff has a lot of content for us today, just real quick on our Microsoft business as a whole. As I mentioned earlier, Jeff and I kind of lead this practice. We really focus on a couple of different things. Again, we go back to that expertise. So we talk with customers about their licensing. We do a lot of licensing consultations. Are you properly licensed? Are you over licensed? Do we need to look at combining licenses and going to a different overall bundle? We talk a lot about that with our customers and their renewal dates and things like that. But then we take it a little bit farther and we help with the implementation. We help with the migrations. We have a co-managed offering. And then we also do a lot of training and education as well. So if you already have Intune in place, or if you're already using Copilot, can we help out with that kind of stuff? Can we train up you or your employees and really make sure that all that stuff is working seamlessly? So I'll come back at the end. Jeff's going to dive into our Microsoft practice a lot more than what I just did, but I'll come back at the end and finish this up. But for right now, Jeff, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Cool. Courtney, thank you so much. Great to meet you guys. Like Courtney said, I'm one of the senior professional services engineers here at Winslow. So my day-to-day typically looks, like Courtney said, we're diving on the phone calls, helping people out with licensing, talking about their migration strategies. So a lot of things that will come up on the slides, we're talking about it day in and day out. We're seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. Obviously all the Microsoft changes that like to come on a daily basis, and unfortunately make you kind of pull your hair out sometimes trying to understand licensing or figuring out what the next step's going to be for you. And that's what we're here for. We want to have good outcomes for you, have good successful projects. So without further ado, let's dive into all the good stuff today. So modernization, obviously kind of a high button word there, but at the end of the day, it's business agility. We want to make sure that updating applications, getting data to help those organizations quickly adapt and make changes, launch those new initiatives. I mean, that's different for every single company. Everyone's concerned about cost. You want to make sure that you're getting the right license, you're getting your best bang for the buck, whether you're purchasing Microsoft licensing, you're buying VMware licensing, whatever it might be. So a lot of times we jump on phone calls with customers to make sure that they are getting the best licensing, the best deal that they possibly could get. Obviously, with new initiatives, new applications, new services that you put in place, you want to get enhanced user experience for those end users, because they're going to give you grief if something's not working right, or if there's a performance issue, or whatever the case might be. And then again, depending on what industry you're in, security and compliance is key. Obviously, some a little bit more than others, but you got to keep your business protected at the end of the day. So constant changes with regulatory and different compliance requirements. So we'll dive into some of those things that we see what we're helping customers out with right now. So in terms of how do we modernize, we embrace the software as a service solution. We enable mobility for those end users, and we just secure everything as much as we could to get that buttoned up. So if you're starting to take the approach to go with modernizing your infrastructure and you're really taking a deep dive with Microsoft, and again, a lot of this, I will say, comes down to the type of licensing that you have and what features and tool sets are available to you. But if we start this journey, I like to start off first with kind of gaining an inventory of what do you got. So typically, these are some of the things, maybe not all of the things. There could be some things that could be missing on this list, but when we talk to customers, these are a lot of the things that come up in those conversations. Most customers have an AD server. So we start figuring out what is it used for. Obviously, they're authenticating to the network. You might have DNS, DHCP, LAPS, group policy on that Active Directory server. We take a look and see what's going on with it. Some of our customers, and obviously a lot of other people still out there in the world, still have an on-prem Exchange server. And of course, coming up in October, Microsoft's changing everything on it. They're changing the licensing on it. So a lot of times you're not sure if you're ready to make the jump to Office 365's Exchange. Maybe you still want to keep it on-prem. Let's take a look at it. Maybe there's public folders on there. We've done a lot of migrations for customers to get something like that up to Office 365. Even when it comes to file servers, again, depending on what that file server is being used for, if it's a lot of collaboration data, that could be something that could be good for SharePoint. Maybe in some other cases it's not, and that might be something that's a fit for Azure Files. You have to kind of think about your end users. You have to think about what kind of data you're talking about. So that's something that we typically dive into. Kind of the guy in the corner always is the print server. How are we deploying those printers out? Hopefully we can get to a point where we're not using as many printers, but we still have it depending on what industry you're in. So how are we getting those end users to be able to talk to the printers to print out the data? Some people have made the move to go to things like Uniflow or Papercut or something like that, and that makes that strategy a lot more efficient. And we've kind of pushed the application out through Intune, and obviously the server itself might still be sitting on-prem, or maybe you're moving it to Azure. Whatever it might be, Microsoft even has an offering with Universal Print that you could take a look at, but there's a lot of factors that go into those kind of things along with all these other pieces. So that's another one of those key drivers. Internal applications, that one is a huge driver that might put a huge roadblock in what you're trying to do. And with all of these things, it could be piece by piece. You kind of chip away at getting that list down, and then you eventually get to a point where you could be cloud only. So a lot of our customers, we definitely see fit the role of like a hybrid type of scenario, that they want to start migrating some of those things and they want to get to a good finish line. Other customers are fully embracing the cloud at this point, or other ones are hesitant, and we kind of have to go through the gap of just explaining to them that you can make that move, but these are some security things that you need to consider. Obviously, NPS servers, you can still have PKI servers. There's solutions in the cloud now for that, whether it's third party, Microsoft baked in solutions, and even ADFS. A lot of customers are still using ADFS. So Entra with SSO is a great transition to get to something like that. So we'll dive into those things, but really at the end of the day, taking a good inventory, that's usually the way that we get these kind of things started, just to make sure everything's accounted for, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and then we start planning it out. First big area I want to run into is identity. This one, once you get up to the M365 stack, you could see some of the things that we're talking to customers about right now, eliminating the ADFS, moving that into Entra. A very much so hot button item right now, passwordless authentication strategies. So I included a couple little images down below there. You could see, obviously it used to be password, just username and password, and that's it. Then SMS and voice kind of trickled in, and Authenticator came into play. Now we have things like Windows Hello for Business, and even in a hybrid scenario, we can do the Kerberos Cloud Trust to still access that data for cloud only. FIDO2 keys, I've got a FIDO2 key for my privileged account. Obviously, even with Authenticator, they have Authenticator pass keys now that you could start going down that strategy. And some great YouTube videos out there, but just in my experience, you can truly get to a point where you could give a new employee a temporary access pass, allow them to get in, get a FIDO key, get a Authenticator pass key, whatever's going on with it. And those things are a reality. So happy to have those kind of conversations here at Winslow. We're putting it into practice with some of our privileged accounts and expanding out as we go. But once you get up to Entra, the big things that you usually, depending on your license, come into play is conditional access, multi-factor authentication. Those kind of things really start to build that security gap for you guys. You can see once you have Entra established, you're in Office 365, you're starting to utilize it. This is where, hey, I want to use my Microsoft authentication with some of our other applications that we have that are third party, monitoring, whatever it might be. So they really do a good job with their SAML integration. They have a nice robust catalog that makes it a lot easier, and you truly can have that one username password to just get into those other applications, and then you can tuck security on top of it. So you're securing, trying to get into those other applications as well. So really trying to centralize. That would probably be the word of the day on this one, just to get as many things up into that stack and simplifying it for the end users. This one's a mouthful. So the Microsoft Management Modernization, MMM is what I would much rather call it, so you don't get tongue twisted, but utilizing things like Intune. You get your email up, so it's a hosted Exchange environment. You're using SharePoint and OneDrive because everybody, with most licenses, you're getting so much storage and so much capability with it for collaboration, for communication. And you can see some of those benefits if you take that jump. Obviously, if you start moving data to SharePoint and OneDrive, you're going to get a much more easier time to push documents out to other employees, have the collaboration that you're looking for. But then at the same time, you really need to make sure that you have those policies in play. You have the proper access to that, not access to this, because even if you start going down a path that we've had different conversations with and had different webinars before about Copilot, Copilot has that data, and it will only interact with the data that you have permissions to. So as we dive along here a little bit more, we want to make sure permissions are good if we're taking it from on-prem and bringing it up to Office 365, because if you had a mess on-prem, you're bringing it up to Office 365, the mess is going to travel with it. So we really like to make sure that customers are set up for success there if they're going to take that journey. But obviously, once you make that move to Office 365, in every single portal, there's policies, there's security settings, there's different ways that you could truly protect that data. So if you want to get started on this type of section, you can see I just kind of put down some of the questions that we typically ask when we go with something like this. So obviously, depending on that licensing that you have, that steers the conversation in different directions, or we start talking about other add-ins, or maybe making a jump up from a business standard to a business premium to start getting some of these security benefits. If you're a smaller customer, if you're using the O365s, you're moving to M. even if you're in the GCC type of environment, looking at, again, what's available to secure the environment and things like that. That's what we're here to help with. Obviously, personal data drives. So you got your H drive that you're pushing out to everybody and you want to start migrating everybody to OneDrive. That's a strategy that you can go down. Is that Exchange server still on-prem? Talking about what's on the file server. Is that something that could be a piece of data that could move to like something like SharePoint, or are we copying huge CAD files that just, it's not going to be a good fit for something like that, and we got to come up with a different strategy like Azure files or something like that. So case by case basis, every single customer is out there is different. They're on a different type of journey, but you can still achieve that same end goal at the end of the day. It just might look different for different customers. Let's ditch your on-prem AD. We've had several customers interested in this. We've implemented this before. Everybody seems like they're in a different flavor. And again, it all comes down to what's sitting on-prem, like we went back a couple slides ago. So obviously, most customers tend to have that traditional on-premise AD, and maybe they're syncing some of that user device data up to Office 365 for Entra ID, for that identity kind of gate that everything comes into to sign into those different applications. And then when we start to think about that cloud journey, there is another service that you'll see on the next slide with the diagram that tightly integrates with Entra ID is Entra ID domain services. So maybe in some scenarios, you are going to move an application that is on-prem up to Azure, and you still need to identity into those other applications. LDAP, Kerberos, NTLM authentication are capabilities with that Microsoft Entra domain services, and that's a service in Azure itself. So if it's kind of an eye chart on this one, but if we start to look, these are a lot of the typical scenarios that customers fall in. So you can see on the top left, we have an on-prem AD server. They are syncing their user and device data up to Entra ID. Maybe they do have an Azure tenant that they have some servers in, they have some services from Azure, and that still needs to talk to Entra ID from an identity standpoint. So in that case, they've made the purchase of the Microsoft Entra domain services. That's like a domain controller up in the cloud, doing that authentication for everything in Azure, but extending all of those things over to Entra ID. You could see in other cases, they don't have a footprint on-prem. They do have Microsoft Entra ID that's handling the identity of Office 365 in your SaaS applications, but then they tuck on the Microsoft Entra domain services to extend some of those identity features into Azure for those other workloads. Bottom left on that one, you can see that one's kind of like a typical scenario that we see. So whether you're using Microsoft Entra Connect or Azure AD Connect, Microsoft did release a new Microsoft Entra Connect Cloud Sync. That one's still up and coming. Obviously, it's a much smaller footprint. It does make things a little bit more lightweight on the on-prem side. It is still missing some key features compared to what the traditional Microsoft Entra ID connects. So it's not a one-size-fit-all for everybody, but that's typically what we see. Or you could see on the last one, it's just on-prem AD syncing up to Azure AD, and you're extending some of those features without Microsoft Entra domain services into your Azure tenant. So those are kind of all the scenarios. And like I said, still not a one-size-fit-all. A lot of solutions out there. So depending on what your needs are, you're going to fit into one of those. You might be doing one of those now. We dive into it. We help you get those things figured out. This one's a key one, security hardening. So many areas of the 365 stack are security tools, different bits and pieces that you get configured. So I like to think of Defender Suite as like a Swiss Army knife, and that's for good and for bad, where there's so many things in there, sometimes it's hard to find something that you're looking for. In other cases, there's so many things in there that are useful that you may not even know about, that you discover. But at the end of the day, again, depending on that type of license that you have, and I'm kind of beating a dead bush on that one, but unfortunately, it really plays out of some more advanced features. Like in some cases, some customers have Entra ID Plan 2 that has that risk-based conditional access. Other customers have the Plan 1 where it's just traditional conditional access. Then you can start getting into PIM, depending on the type of license that you have. Again, from a security focused standpoint, these are kind of some of the things that we try to push or make sure that are set up correctly. If you're signing on with us to do a project, we're doing an audit for you to make sure that everything's set up correctly depending on what that initiative is. So in the identity on the Entra side, we're looking at conditional access policies, making sure you have everything that you need, whether you're protecting signing into Office 365 or those other type of SaaS applications, or you want to put country restrictions in, or you want to make sure that only a compliant device joins, or we're pushing out mobile devices and we want to make sure that the data, your Office 365 data is protected. So there's MAN policies that tie in with Intune and things like that. And we bundle it in with the conditional access policy to make sure that everything's working the way that it needs to. And then on the endpoints, whether it's Defender, you're using some other type of antivirus, EDR type of protection, making sure that that's on there, pushed out to the devices. So maybe pushing that out through Intune. Usually when we do an Intune project, we like to push laps out. Whether you're using an on-prem one or not, it's great to have that local admin and start kind of tightening the reins on that, not giving the end users local admin access and having a controlled rotated based password for that local admin. We want to make sure all the devices are encrypted with BitLocker protection, or if it's a Mac with File Vault, whatever it might be. Then you can start, if you are utilizing Intune, starting to take advantage of some of those features. There's 5,000 plus settings that exist in that catalog alone. Then I can import ADMX templates into the mix. We've had some customers that needed CIS benchmarks that we could bring in policies on those kind of things, pushing out Hello for Business. Patching is another piece that's tucked in with Intune. So whether you're patching the OS, you're patching the application, you might be using a third party for that. Maybe you still have WSUS that's on-prem going away. Or even taking the journey where, I mean, another hot button piece right now is a lot of people are still on Windows 10. It's going away. We need to get to Windows 11. So some of our customers, we're helping them go down the path to use Intune to push out that feature update to be able to take the journey and get up to Windows 11. And there's a lot of great reports and things like that that are tucked in there to get that application readiness. So if we're going to run into issues, even in our case at Winslow, we have a couple scenarios where have one or two older devices, they won't make it to Windows 11, time to replace them. So getting those ideas, getting that inventory, it definitely does a great job with those kind of things to make sure that the endpoints are protected. Then we start talking about the files. We want to make sure that data loss prevention, labeling, proper sharing permissions are in place. And then in the Purview and Defender stack, I mean, there's tons of vulnerability management pieces with Defender. There's data lifecycle management, risk management. You can run compliance audits on the environment to start making sure that you're getting ready. So a lot of great things, but definitely a key feature. Perfect example that we have that we can just even run through really quick here. We had somebody click a rogue link that shouldn't have never clicked on, but accidentally clicked on it. With having Defender in place and having the right bits and pieces on policies configured within seconds. I mean, we got a notification, user was disabled, they got completely locked out of the environment, and we got notified about it and we were able to take action on it. So a lot of automation is really coming to the forefront that we can help get set up, help get configured to protect those rogue incidents that unfortunately come up every day. Another hot button that comes up is if your data is protected with Microsoft. It flat out says in the Microsoft agreements that you agree to, it's a shared responsibility. And you could read what is copy and pasted out of the Microsoft agreement. They'll do their best to keep up with it, but it is a shared responsibility. So you have to protect your data. Obviously, you might have an on-prem solution that's backing up everything now, but if you move to Office 365, you just can't expect that it's backed up. They have some mechanisms in place, but things could fail. Things might not go the way that you want to. So obviously, things that come up, accidental deletion, you had a ransomware attack, malicious insider threats that maybe started going crazy and deleting files, even employee turnover. Obviously, just want to make sure that the data is stored off somewhere if we're eating up a license, whatever the case might be, depending on those scenarios. But There's a lot of choices out there. And even with those M365 backups, it's not just email, it's not just files, it's Teams, it's backing up your actual Entra. We even have a solution that we offer too, where we can help you manage that Office 365 backup. We use Commvault Cloud as an example to help go through that. So we're there to answer those questions for making sure that the data is protected, even if it's sitting somewhere else. Remote desktop's another big key feature that you have some options. Obviously, from VMware and Citrix, you have other options on the table, but if you are taking the journey with Microsoft, they have their Azure Virtual Desktop that's in the cloud that is a lot of flexibility for pooled environments, still get that level of control. If we want something that's a little bit more seamless, more individualized to the user with like a persistent connection, there's Windows 365. Obviously, people don't use any part of VDI and they have just the native PCs or tablets, whatever it might be. But if we have that remote workforce, Microsoft does have some options that you can kind of get some other alternatives out there. And this is kind of an eye chart on this one, but you can see there are a lot of different options of getting VDI with Microsoft. Like I said, in the Windows 365, if you are on those enterprise type of licenses, we can push those kind of things out through Intune. Or if it's the business side, it's kind of a little bit more baked down, if you will. And then on the Azure side, you have personal and pulled. And you can see there's a lot of benefits and potential cost savings that could come from this, but a lot of options that exist out there. And again, depending on those type of applications that you have still on-prem, Azure could be a solution to move it. You obviously can lift and shift. You want to right size it, maybe utilize an Azure service, if it's a web app, database, whatever it might be. But you could start to eliminate some of that on-prem footprint and start to move that to Azure. Again, that one's a huge toss-up where you start to analyze the cost of what it is to be on-prem versus like a TCO of what it would be in Azure. They do have some strategies like reserved instances, the hybrid, the license benefit to save some costs there, but we go through those motions, help you understand this is what it's going to be to be on-prem versus what it's going to be if you're going to move it up to Azure. So you have options there. Obviously, Microsoft 365 ecosystem is just so robust, so many features, so many things that change on a day-to-day basis. We could, if at some point in time you want a little bit of extra help with it, to ensure that all of those compliance pieces are in place, taking a look at some of those projects that you have, making sure some of that day-to-day stuff like permission management, looking at conditional access policies. We do have a managed offering to just help you co-pilot of going through the M365 stack. And we have monthly report cards and other proactive and advisory services to make sure that the tenant is in good shape. So wrapping all of this up, like we kind of talked about a couple slides ago, embrace SaaS. Look at bringing in some of those other applications into Entra, enabling mobility. Again, whether it's a remote workforce or not, things like Intune are so many different ways that you could go down a path to push applications, push policy, get that level of control, ensure that those devices are secure, are up to date, and just secure everything as much as you possibly could, whether that is in the Microsoft stack, whether that is just looking at a third party to supplement a piece of that. You really just want to make sure that as much policy and just protection that you can put in place of any of those incoming and outgoing data pieces. And like I said, depending on what your regulatory requirements are, just making sure that you have PIM in place, you have conditional access in place, you're using DLP, you have labeling in play, depending on what the files are. It's a lot, and Microsoft has a lot of good solutions to try to help with something like that. And I think that is my last slide. So Courtney, I will pass it back to you to get it all wrapped up for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I know we're right at time. I know we do have some questions. We will get to those. We'll follow up with you guys after the webinar to handle those. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Just a real quick If you guys want to learn more about this, I know there was a lot of content. There's a lot to, with the Microsoft portfolio as a whole. We're happy to set up a follow-up call with you guys, with Jeff and myself. We can do licensing consultation, health checks, Windows 11 readiness planning, help with any kind of deployment, migration, education, all that stuff I mentioned at the front half of the webinar. So we'll send out a post-webinar survey. Let us know if you want to meet up. We'll also follow up with all of you guys. Again, sorry we ran out of time for questions. Microsoft is a huge portfolio, but we appreciate you guys spending time with us today. If you threw a question in there, we'll get to you here shortly with some answers, and then I'll reach out to whoever wins the raffle as well. So thank you again for your time. 30 minutes was very well good use, I hope. And Jeff, thank you so much for everything. I know it's a lot to cover in a short time.
Happy to. And Courtney, thank you for taking everything on too. Appreciate it, everybody.